He's in Panama City right now. Actually, he has to coach football games for a tournament, but he's also getting playing time on the beach. So lucky him. I actually think he's making a 12-hour drive down to Panama City today, so maybe not so lucky. Has to wait a little while before he can get to the beach. But it's just me for today. I try to get Sam McGinnis on the show, and I told him about this a week ago, and he never got back to me because he's awful at communicating. That's why we missed the Sam show a couple of weeks ago. But anyways, it's just me for today. We do have a fun topic, though. We are going to go over my current NFL power rankings. I would like to remind anyone, if you have any comments, make sure you put them in the chat. Also, you can live tweet us at the Grueling Truth right now. We should have a post going live where you can send us some questions and make comments. Bobby Sheridan, if you're listening, feel free to at me anything, and we can discuss the power rankings kind of as the show goes on. But before we get into my Week 11 power rankings, I do want to go over some brief NFL news at this point. Oh, I forgot to remind you, the show is sponsored by Manscaped. If you go to manscaped.com and use promo code TGT20, get 20% off your first order plus free shipping. That's a good quality product, better than what you can find in stores. And plus, if you use promo code TGT20, you really help the show out. And, it just helps us keep us afloat, so we would really appreciate that. But before we go any further, I want to talk about some brief NFL news, stuff that came out in the past couple of hours. So Cleveland Farrell has been placed on the COVID-19 list. He's a defensive end for the Las Vegas Raiders, a former first-round pick. He's now on the COVID list. He tested positive. The Browns have also placed several players on COVID-19 list, including right tackle Jack Conklin. He hasn't tested positive, but he was deemed close enough to someone who did that he has to be on the list for a little while now. Of course, those players have the possibility to play this weekend. Farrell, on the other hand, sounds like he will not be available. A little bit of fun news here. The Jaguar fans have actually started a campaign to get Yannick Ngakoue into the Pro Bowl. Now, the Pro Bowl isn't happening this year, obviously, but they're still naming players to the Pro Bowl, technically. So Jaguars fans have started an online campaign along with other teams from the NFC North, not named the Minnesota Vikings, because the Vikings traded a conditional fifth-round pick to Jacksonville when they got Ngakoue in the first place. Of course, they subsequently traded him to Baltimore. But they traded a conditional fifth-round pick. That becomes a fourth-round pick if Ngakoue makes the Pro Bowl. So Jaguars fans are hoping to get a high-round pick. And apparently the Detroit Lions, Green Bay Packers, and Chicago Bears fans are also willing to help out, because it means that the Minnesota Vikings lose a fourth-round pick. So that's a little bit of fun news there. Drew Brees, when he got another second opinion on his injuries, and they were all confirmed, cracked ribs on both sides of his body, plus a punctured lung, is expected to miss at least 2 weeks. Let me say this: if he comes back in fewer than 3 or 4 weeks, I'd be shocked. You got cracked ribs on both of your bodies, a punctured lung. I know they just put the vest over you sometimes. They say go out there. There have been quarterbacks who have played with cracked ribs before, even with issues in their back where little bones were cracked, and they've gone out and played. So it's not unheard of. But it'd be it's really pushing your luck there. If you're getting up there in age, the way Drew Brees is, you're over 40 years old, and you're trying to go out there with cracked ribs and play against guys who are 300 pounds, charging at you, trying to take your head off. That just sounds, why would you do that to yourself? You shouldn't do that. He should be out at least 3 weeks. I would think maybe 4 to 5, just to make sure he's fully healthy before they go out there and do something that could be more permanently damaging. On the other hand, Teddy Bridgewater, who we saw leave the game for the Carolina Panthers this past week, and he's practicing today, so he looks like he's going to be available for this weekend. Christian McCaffrey won't be, though. The Panthers have already ruled him out. He missed, of course, this past weekend with a shoulder injury. Sounds like he's going to miss yet another game. So McCaffrey is out. Bridgewater is in. Looking around, the NFL and NFLPA also agreed to a schedule for the 2021 NFL offseason. The new league year will begin March 17th, and the draft is April 29th through May 1st, so nothing really surprising there. Sounds like business as usual. Anything else? Drew Lock is dealing with a muscle strain and a bruise near his ribs, but he sounds like he could practice later this week. He's not practicing today, though. Obviously, it doesn't bode well for him playing this coming weekend. But there is the possibility that he will practice later in the week, in which case he could play. If you're the Denver Broncos, I don't think you want him to play, particularly because he threw 4 interceptions this past weekend. Give someone else an opportunity to play. Drew Lock, he had a couple of decent throws against the Chargers and Falcons. But this is a guy who's a turnover machine. He looks like the latest and possibly biggest whiff of the John Elway era as a GM, maybe outside of Paxton Lynch. So to me, if you're Drew Lock, or if you're coaching Drew Lock, I'd say don't give him his job this weekend. Let him sit and throw someone else in there. See if someone else can create something for you. Because you're Denver, I mean, your season's already over. I think Vic Fangio, the head coach, is going to be gone. You have pieces there. You've got Jerry Jeudy, who's a really good young receiver. You got Philip Lindsay, Royce Freeman, Melvin Gordon in the backfield. Your offensive line has improved significantly. Your defense is still very good. Obviously missing Von Miller, but I still like that defense. The issue is you can't have a quarterback that throws 4 interceptions a game. So Drew Lock to me is a liability in Denver. He might play this weekend with the injuries. He'll probably be available to play. If I was the coach, I would not put him in. DeAndre Baker, if you remember who that is, he was a cornerback selected by the New York Giants in the first round a couple of years ago. But he was released in the offseason because he was accused of armed robbery. Remember, this was a very volatile case. People were kind of going back and forth of what actually happened. People were accused of lying about what actually happened. And then just kind of out of nowhere, the charges were recently dropped because there was issues with the prosecution. So now Baker is not being charged with anything. He's actually planning on signing with the Kansas City Chiefs practice squad. That's a very cheap signing, obviously, for the Chiefs. Not a lot of risk involved whatsoever. I mean, you're signing a guy who might be problematic in the locker room, might have character issues. If it's only your practice squad, it doesn't really affect you that much. And the Chiefs are already thin at quarterback in terms of depth chart. So why not bring in Baker and see what he has? He is a former first-round pick who was starting to play a little bit better towards the end of his time with New York. And speaking of New York, the Giants have fired their offensive line coach, Mark Colombo, and are bringing in a guy whose last name I cannot pronounce, but his first name is Dave. They're replacing him. And, this guy had some experience with the Colts apparently a couple of years ago when the Colts were starting to build up their great offensive line. Maybe it will turn things around and help the Giants out. So I know their offensive line has played better in recent weeks, but has not been terrific so far this season. Has not been good in recent seasons at the very least. That's a lot of NFL news. I'm glad that's over. So now we can actually talk about my NFL power rankings. Now, usually we do a quarterback power rankings every Tuesday. We do the full team power rankings on Wednesday, so we're going to do those today. Let me just make sure I pull this up. There we go. Let's see if I can center this. Yeah, we have the Week 11 power rankings are here. And it's the same top 3. I have Kansas City 1, New Orleans 2, Pittsburgh 3. You can't really see that. Let me see if I can line it up right there. We go. Yeah, so I don't think Kansas City is going to waver from this spot unless they lose again to the Raiders, because they play the Raiders again this weekend. And that's the only team that's beat them all season. This, for some reason, is not lining up, and it's starting to get frustrating. But I guess we have to leave it. There. But really, or maybe I just take it off because it's not going to show itself. You can check that out on thegruelingtruth.com, by the way. You can check out the full rankings there. I have Kansas City at number 1. To me, the Chiefs are the clear number 1 in the league right now. I don't think it's very close. I know we talk about there not being many Super Bowl favorites this year, but to me, it's Kansas City and then everyone else. Because the Chiefs are still very good. They haven't lost to the Raiders, but even in that game, the offense scored a fair number of points. They've looked shakier this year, more shaky than they did last season. To me, this is still the number 1 team by far. I don't think there's a close second team to them in the NFL. I expect them to go out there and beat the Raiders this time around, and when they do, it'll confirm their spot as the number 1 team in the NFL. Now, I'm not being against Patrick Mahomes. Mike comes on this show a lot, and he'll make comparisons between Mahomes and Josh Allen, or he'll talk about how other quarterbacks are closer to Mahomes than we give him credit for. The only 2 quarterbacks in the NFL right now that are close to Mahomes are Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers. You can put Tom Brady in there, kind of as a legacy reward, and also he's still a good quarterback, and he's the greatest quarterback of all time. But the only 2 quarterbacks who are currently in their physical form close to Mahomes would be Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers in terms of their skill and ability. No one else is even close. Not Lamar Jackson, not Josh Allen. I don't want to hear the Josh Allen comparisons. So none of that stuff is even relevant to me. I think Patrick Mahomes is by far the best quarterback. Well, him and Russell Wilson, in terms of talent, are the best quarterbacks in the NFL. I think Mike, who was very high on Patrick Mahomes during the Super Bowl time, has kind of dropped off on him for some reason. I don't know why. But I think, to me, Patrick Mahomes is a generational talent. And I believe that he is one of the main reasons, if not the main reason, why Kansas City will continue to be number 1 in the NFL power rankings. Number 2, the New Orleans Saints. Now, this could change quite a bit because obviously Breeze, like I said, is going to miss a couple of weeks. Breeze was the key reason why the offense was starting to really hum for them, starting to be really successful. Even without Michael Thomas and Sanders early in the year, he was able to hold the offense together. Kamara is also playing phenomenal with him. It'll be interesting to see what Jameis Winston is able to do behind this offensive line. By the way, it's a really good offensive line. And you got plenty of pieces around him: Emmanuel Sanders, Jared Cook, Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara, Latavius Murray. You have plenty of supporting cast members So you're Jameis Winston. There's no excuse to fail here. You should be successful in your time with New Orleans Saints. So Kansas City 1, New Orleans Saints number 2. Number 3 is still the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like I said, same order 1, 2, 3 as last weekend. Because the Steelers are still undefeated, they had a convincing win against the Cincinnati Bengals. I know it's only the Bengals, so you can only take so much from that game. But to me, Ben looked very good. He's starting to look a little bit beat up, though. I'm a little concerned about that. This is partially what happens when you moved Pittsburgh's bye week from the middle of the season all the way up to the very beginning of the season to accommodate the Tennessee Titans. You now are putting them in a situation where they have to play so many games in a row, and guys like Ben start to get banged up. That is very frustrating. So I will say that is a little bit annoying that this is going on like this. I don't really know how it's going to end for Pittsburgh. I don't know when the undefeated streak is going to end. I hope it doesn't end. I don't think it will end in the near future. But we'll see how it plays out. I got Steelers at number 3, even though maybe the competition they beat has been fantastic. I think you can't put an undefeated team lower than 3. Number 4, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I understand they got smacked by the New Orleans Saints 2 weeks ago now. They were very good against Carolina Panthers this past weekend. Offense ran perfectly fine. Antonio Brown's getting more involved for them. You also have Mike Evans, who's still playing well, and Chris Godwin's getting healthy. So to me, this offense is finally starting to click. Ronald Jones had a big game. I think things are working out. They also made some shifts along the offensive line, which maybe will help them out in the future. So that was one of the weak spots for them early in the year. Tampa Bay is still a very good team. I don't want to bet against Tom Brady. I've said this before. You just don't bet against players like Tom Brady. So we'll see how it all plays out. I still like the Buccaneers a lot, but I think I'll be honest, like I already said, after 1, things to drop off quite significantly. I think Kansas City's head and shoulders above everyone else. I think the Saints are a clear number 2 when Drew Brees is healthy. After that, things start to get very shaky. And speaking of shaky, the Buffalo Bills at number 5. So the Bills are 7-3. And they have some good wins on the schedule. They've beaten the Rams. The Rams are a pretty decent team. They beat the Dolphins in week 2. Now, granted, that was a very different Dolphins team than the one that's going right now. The Raiders, but they also lost to the Titans and lost to the Chiefs. And they just lost to the Cardinals in a very close game, but they beat the Seahawks and they beat the Patriots. It's a very back-and-forth schedule for the Buffalo Bills, to the point where I'm not exactly sure how I feel about them as a team, because they have, like I said, so much back and forth in terms of what's going on with this organization. And with Josh Allen, Josh Allen's has some very good games and some very bad games. And honestly, they lost against Arizona because he threw 2 interceptions. If he hadn't turned the ball over twice, they probably would have won that game. So to me, Josh Allen, very up and down quarterback. I still think the Buffalo Bills are probably going to win the AFC East, and I still think they're probably going to eliminate in the first round when you get to the playoffs. But speaking of the AFC East, it's a lot closer race than some people think. I have the Miami Dolphins at number 6, and people might not like this because Tua Tagovailoa has only started, 3 games so far. People might think it's premature, but to me, Tua is a very good quarterback right now. He's a top 16 quarterback in the NFL. He's not turning the ball over. And I think that's a huge thing. It's the fact that he's not been the kind of guy who's turning the ball over right now. He's making a very concerted effort to play within the system. And he's also making strides week to week. It's been very good so far, to the point that I believe he could be a top 10 quarterback by the time the season ends. And also, we've seen Brian Flores' coaching job. He's doing these guys fired up, and they're playing hard football for him. That defense, that secondary, played especially well the last 2 or 3 weeks so far. So the defense has picked up its play. Tua Tagovailoa is at quarterback. He's playing well. They had great contributions from the running back position this past weekend, despite not having Myles Gaskin. So they are playing well. They're playing good football. You know what? I think they could challenge Buffalo Bills for the AFC East title. I don't think they're going to win it. I think they're probably going to get a wild card spot. But they do play Buffalo in Week 17. That's going to be a very good game. They also play, between now and then, they play the Chiefs, the Patriots, the Raiders, and the Bills. Those are their final 4 games of the season. So for the Dolphins, a very tough end of the year. But also, we'll learn quite a bit about that team when we get to that stretch. Number 7, Arizona. I think the Cardinals are a very good football team. I think Kyler Murray is everything we thought he was going to be, and potentially a little bit more. I was not a huge Kyler Murray fan last year. I'll admit that. I was a very big detractor of Kyler Murray because I thought he got overhyped. He's been very good this year. He's been top 10 quarterback material this year. I know Mike doesn't like him. Mike seems to take a lot of shots at Kyler Murray. He is better than what Mike's giving him credit for. And you know what? I think he's actually probably a better quarterback than Josh Allen right now. And Mike will not like that. But he is a better quarterback than Josh Allen right now in my eyes, based on what he's done. In Arizona, with DeAndre Hopkins, Larry Fitzgerald, Kane Drake coming back from injury, now playing well. I think they have a lot of pieces in Arizona. I don't view them as a Super Bowl competitor because the offensive line is still a little questionable. It's a lot better than last year. The defense, though, to me, is the biggest issue. They don't really have pass rush. The secondary is a little shaky. Patrick Peterson isn't what he used to, and Budda Baker's been beat up. So to me, the defense is a big issue for Arizona. But they can score 35 points per game, and that will get you a lot of wins in the NFL. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. To me, Arizona's a hot team right now. I have them at number 7. And number 8, it's Aaron Rodgers' team, the Green Bay Packers. The Packers narrowly beat the Jacksonville Jaguars this past weekend. And granted, I think if you watch the game, you would tell the Packers had more of a solid lead than you'd think they would have based on the score alone. At the same time, the Packers have flashed quite some obvious flaws throughout the time. They got beat up pretty bad by Buccaneers earlier this year. They've had struggles. They lost to Minnesota. They've had struggles offensively, just getting in a rhythm. Defensively, they've been pretty bad compared to the fact that they have J. Alexander. They have Kenny Clark. They have good pieces defensively, but they really don't have a middle of the defense apparently, which is surprising because you have Clark in there. In ordinarily, he's a very good player, but for some reason, the defense has not emerged for this team. They're very susceptible to the running game. To me, Green Bay, Aaron Rodgers does a lot for this team. So does Devontae Adams. I'm not sold in the supporting cast around them right now. Number 9, Las Vegas Raiders. This is the classic wild card team of the NFL right now. These teams have bodies what it means to be a wild card. They are so up and down, so back and forth. They've beaten the Panthers, they've beaten the Saints, and they've also beaten the Chiefs this year. They've lost 2, and they've also beaten the Browns as well. And they've lost to the Buccaneers, the Bills, and the Patriots. So they've beaten some good teams. They've lost some good teams. They play the Chiefs this weekend. That would really determine their spot in the power rankings moving forward. Derek Carr's playing good football. I know his numbers do not reflect. These numbers don't look like MVP numbers. He's not an MVP candidate to me this year. But he's been very efficient. He's been effective. He has played within the system. He's not turned the ball over recently. And the Raiders are running the ball terrific the past couple of weeks with Devontae Booker and Josh Jacobs. To me, the Raiders are a Super Bowl contender in my mind. They're right there because they can beat anyone, I think, at this point. They've proven that. But they've also proven that they can go out there and be beaten 45-20. So to me, it's a very up and down team. I don't really know where they're going to go moving forward. It'll be interesting to see because this is a team I really can't predict how their season will end. Number 10, the Colts. The Colts obviously got a big boost from beating Tennessee Titans this past weekend. I mean, that's really what saved them, I think, this year. They were turning down for quite a while. And Philip Rivers, to me, was a bottom 10 quarterback for most of the year until maybe the past 3 or 4 weeks, in which case he's picked his play up quite significantly. Maybe it's because he's just starting to fit into the system. Maybe it's because he's just starting to get a grasp of everything going on around him. Who knows? But it seems like he's really picking it up. And also, the emergence of Michael Pittman Jr. is helping out as well. So it'll be interesting to see how everything plays out for the Colts moving forward. I don't think they're a Super Bowl contender. I wouldn't put them in that category. I'm not afraid of playing the Colts. Let me put it that way. I would not be afraid of playing the Colts whatsoever. Because I think I can contain Philip Rivers and I can stop the running game. And I think I can cover their wide receivers. And I think I can pick apart pieces of defense. Defense has been very good this year, just statistically speaking. I still think it has vulnerabilities, though. So to me, the Colts, they're 10. I think they'll be lower in the future. Number 11, Los Angeles Rams. It'd be higher if Jared Goff is better. Jared Goff is a solid NFL quarterback. Jared Goff is not a top 10 quarterback, and that's what's holding the Rams back in my mind, keeping them from being much higher on this list. If you had a better offense or just a more consistent offense, I would put them significantly higher. They have the receiving options to be a top 10 team, but they don't have the quarterback play. They don't have the running back play to convince me that they belong in that spot. Defense has been good, probably the best defense in that division. It's just that I don't think they have the key pieces on offense to be a top 10 team or be a title contender. Now, a team that does have the offensive pieces to be a title contender are the Seattle Seahawks. They need to work a little bit more on establishing the running game. They've gone from being a team that relied almost solely on the running game to a team that is now relying almost solely on Russell Wilson. I mean, they have to find a healthy medium. They can't be doing this back and forth thing. And Russell Wilson has been very good this year up until the past 2 or 3 weeks, in which case he's had 2 games the past 3 outings per Seattle, I believe, where he's turned the ball over more times than he's thrown for touchdowns. So it's an issue. And Wilson is starting to feel the pressure. This is what happened last year around this time, is his MVP case fell apart because he started to struggle. And I blame primarily Seattle's pathetic defense for putting a lot of pressure on Wilson. But at the same time, he's also making mistakes you would not expect Russell Wilson to make. So it's not that he's completely free of blame. He deserves some of it, certainly. But Seattle Seahawks, to me, they are a contender because Russell Wilson's on the team, but they are bleeding right now. They need to find a way to shore up everything that's going wrong with them. I don't know if they will be able to do that this late in the year. Number 13, Baltimore. Speaking of a team that's bleeding, the Ravens are having some difficulties the past couple of weeks. They did beat the Colts 2 weeks ago. They lost to the Patriots. They were just outcoached. In a game where it was raining quite a bit, the Patriots ran the ball consistently. They pounded the ball up the middle. They took advantage of Calais Campbell being hurt, and they just beat the Ravens with the running game. Now, after struggling to establish Lamar Jackson as a passer for weeks, the Ravens found a way to establish him as a passer against the New England Patriots. A game where they should have been running the ball more. Instead, they didn't run the ball nearly as much as they needed to ground the clock, keep possession, and they ended up losing the game. So to me, there's a lot going on in Baltimore right now. I'm not a fan of how they offensively game plan for the Patriots this past weekend. And frankly, I think this team's trending down. Lamar Jackson obviously hasn't played at near the level he was last season. We'll see if this team can just survive and to make it to the playoffs. Because at this point, there's a chance they get knocked out based on how many teams are at 6-3. There's 6 teams at 6-3 in the AFC right now. 1 or 2 of those teams will not make the playoffs. So it's a very dire time in my mind for Baltimore. They need to get together and win a couple in a row. Same thing goes for Tennessee Titans. The Titans start off the year very hot. After they lost to Pittsburgh, they've cooled off significantly. They're down to 6-3 right now. One of those many 6-3 teams I mentioned. And they've lost 3 of their last 4 games. The one win coming against the Bears. Ryan Tannehill, to me, has not looked nearly as good as he did early in the year. So there are issues there. Derrick Henry has been slowed down and stopped in several instances, so they're struggling to establish the running game as much as they did early in this year and last season. And frankly, that defense just is not good. Defense is not good enough. Similar to Seattle, defense is not good enough to make this team a title contender in my mind. They could still get there because I like Mike Vrabel as a coach. I like Derrick Henry. I just don't think there's a good enough defense here for Tennessee to seriously contend for a championship. Number 15, the Vikings. The Vikings, this was a team that I thought Mike Zimmer could lose his job early this year. I thought Zimmer could be fired before the end of the season. I still think Zimmer's a good head coach, don't get me wrong. But they were playing so bad, I thought there was a serious chance here you could see a coaching change midway through the year. And a lot of that was on Kirk Cousins throwing a lot of interceptions early in the season. He's taking care of that. They're not throwing nearly as many now. But, after starting the year, I'm looking at it right now. After starting the year 1-5, they've really pulled it together in the past couple of weeks. They've won 3 in a row. They're out 4-5. And I like what the Vikings have been doing with Dalvin Cook, getting him involved quite a bit. He's been great for them. And it's really we're looking at a similar situation to I think what Tennessee had last year with Derrick Henry, where you had the workhorse back in Dalvin Cook, who's opening up opportunities for your quarterback, Kirk Cousins. And of course, you have Justin Jefferson, who's a phenomenal rookie receiver. You have other options like Adam Thielen, Kyle Rudolph, Irv Smith Jr. was hurt this past weekend. And the defense has gotten better. And I think the defense has gotten better because they have more young players playing right now. They got rid of some of the veterans. And they kind of rejuvenated this defense. So the Vikings, to me, are right around the midpoint in the NFL. They're hot right now, and I believe they can continue that hot streak. I don't see them making the playoffs. I know Mike brought it up yesterday. I don't see the Vikings making the playoffs whatsoever. But I think they could get to 8-8, and that would probably be enough to keep Mike Zimmer around and give them a little hope moving forward. 16, the Cleveland Browns. This is a little bit of my bias. I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, obviously, so I have a little bit of a bias against the Browns because I've seen them screw it up so many times that I just have to bet that they're going to do it again. And you know what? I give him credit for being at 6-3. I give Kevin Stefanski credit for being at 6-3 right now. My issue is that you beat the Houston Texans 10-7. You ran the ball phenomenally, over 100 rushing yards. Nick Chubb in his return over 100 rushing yards. Nick Chubb to me is probably the best running back in right now. I know people will say Derrick Henry, Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara. I like Nick Chubb a lot. So I think Nick Chubb could be up there in those rankings. The issue with me is I don't think the Browns are good enough to beat competitive teams. They beat the Colts. That's their one win, I believe, against the winning football team this year. The other teams they beat the Bengals, they beat the Texans. Who they beat? They beat Washington, they beat the Cowboys. They've lost 38-6 to Baltimore. They lost 38-7 to Pittsburgh. They lost 16-6 to Las Vegas. I don't view the Browns as a Super Bowl competitor. I think they're good enough to make the playoffs because they have a good record so far and they have enough star players on offense and defense. I do not think this team is going to make it past the first round of the playoffs, assuming they even get there. 17, the Carolina Panthers. I think Matt Rule's team plays very hard for their coach. I think he's done a good job so far with the pieces he's been given. Obviously, missing Christian McCaffrey has been a big deal for them. They're only 3-7 right now. I think they're a better team than that. I think the defense has played better than that, even though they're extremely young. You look at the games they could have won. If they had Christian McCaffrey, I think you had an opportunity. You could have beat the Saints a couple of weeks ago. You could have beat the Chiefs. Could have beat the Falcons. I think there could beat the Bears. There are a lot of opportunities here. Or saying you could have done this, you could have done that. I think going forward, really this next season, we'll have an opportunity to see if the Panthers can win those close games and you turn those into wins and prove that they can make the playoffs. Because right now they have the foundation that I like to see. Bridgewater's been playing really well. Robert Anderson and DJ Moore have connected with him very well. McCaffrey has been hurt, obviously, but when he's available, he's still very good. They have all the pieces they need to be a playoff caliber team. I think it just needs to get healthy. They need to come together. They need to get some of these young rookies on defense, a little more experience. I think this team could be a playoff team next season. If they're not, obviously, it would be a huge disappointment. Number 18, New England Patriots. I had this team in the bottom 5 teams in the NFL last week. I have flipped it up now because the Patriots were looking like they were falling off the ship. Looks like they were sinking entirely last weekend. And now it's much different because they came out, they beat Baltimore, who I have a lot of respect for. The Patriots are now 4-5, and Bill Belichick is coaching to win. Obviously, he is. But we always talk about the idea of an organization from upper management deciding they want to throw, or deciding they want to lose games for a better draft spot. Patriots obviously are not doing that, and I give them a lot of credit for that. They are competing. They're trying to win every single week. They're 4-5 right now, with a team that has probably bottom 5 talent in terms of ranking them amongst every NFL team. Jets obviously are worse than them in terms of talent on the roster. Patriots certainly don't have a lot on offense or defense right now. They are 4-5. 3 games back from the Buffalo Bills. They're not going to make the playoffs. It's not going to happen. But at the same point, if you can get 6 wins for this team, you get to 6-10, that's a huge win for this Patriots team. Like I said, they don't have a lot of talent right now. Expectations were already low for them coming into the year. They've been low throughout the year. But still, this is about a mid-of-the-pack team, and I give Bill Belichick a lot of credit for that. 19, the Atlanta Falcons. This is a team I don't want to play if I'm on a winning streak. This is an upset team. Sort of like the Minnesota Vikings, sort of like the New England Patriots. I don't want to play the Atlanta Falcons because they have offensively all the pieces they need to win, to be great. They face this New Orleans Saints this weekend, so that would be a big game. So like I said, they have the opportunity to upset teams with New Orleans because of all the offensive pieces they have. Think about Calvin Ridley, Julio Jones. Todd Gurley's been pretty good this year. Not fantastic, obviously, not like old Todd Gurley, but he's been good. And Matt Ryan, of course, can still throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. He can still give you that. The issue for the Falcons has been the defense. And it's a mediocre play by Matt Ryan early in the year. But largely, the defense has not been nearly good enough to help them win games. So I put a lot of blame on that for Atlanta. But since the coaching change, they've actually been very good. I think the Falcons are obviously going to miss the playoffs, but they still are trending in the right direction. And that gives me a little bit of hope that they'll be better next year. Number 20, the San Francisco 49ers. I wish we got to see every team in the NFC West be healthy. Because if we saw every team be healthy, I think we could see all 4 teams make the playoffs under this new 17 format. Because you got 7 teams in the conference who will make the playoffs this year. Could be more if we see significant games canceled, but we haven't so far, so I'm going to assume that we won't. If we just break it down here, we would get the winner of the NFC East, and that's it. So we get, say, the Philadelphia, that's 1 team. We get the winner of the NFC North, and to me, that's it. There's not another team making the playoffs from that division. So say the Packers, all right, that's 2 teams. You're going to get both the NFC South teams, Saints, Bucks. That's at 4 right now. That leaves 3 spots. I would assume that's going to be the Cardinals, Rams, and Seahawks this year. But I would argue if the 49ers were healthy, that we could potentially see them come in and maybe knock the Saints or Bucks out of the playoffs because of how loaded this division is. And think of all the pieces they're missing. Jimmy Garoppolo, George Kittle. They didn't have Sherman, I believe, until this past weekend. They've had injuries in the backfield to Raheem Mostert. They've lost Nick Bosa, Solomon Thomas. So there have been so many injuries to me. I just wish we saw us 49ers team healthy. They were never going to be as good as they were last year, but they were still going to be a top 10 team, maybe a top 15 team, and probably make the playoffs. Now that's not going to happen. It's a shame because that would have been super fun to watch that division play out with every team healthy. And after this point, after 20, or maybe even after 19, I feel like competition drops off significantly. Because I got Detroit at 21. Stafford had a good game, led them on a game-winning drive against the Washington football team this past weekend. Detroit's 4-5. They're a decent team. they can beat you if you're down your luck. I don't think they're going to beat any competitive teams this year. I mean, to me, the Lions are just meh, really. I mean, Matt Patricia's probably going to be fired. They don't have a lot of good pieces there. Kenny Galladay, probably the best offensive weapon they have. He's been hurt. DeAndre Swift is looking like he's coming to a little bit of his own, which is very good for them because they need him to be that player right now, or at least moving forward. When they get Stafford, Galladay, and Swift all healthy and experienced to the point where Swift is basically being the lead back, I think that offense would be a lot better. That could still be a year away. 22, the Bengals are here because of Joe Burrow taking it to Tyler Boyd. And not having Joe Mixon, I think, has hurt them, but not significantly because, frankly, the offensive line is not good enough to run block well. So they wouldn't have much of a running game even if Joe Mixon was healthy to me. Defensively, they're horrible. This is really coming down to the offense winning them a couple of games, and that's really what it is. I don't like the coaching staff. I think Burrow, to some degree, is overhyped this year. Because you could say, oh, he's so talented. Well, yeah, but you know what? Talent is only worth so much. You have to be productive. If you're very talented, you could be like Joe Burrow, probably is the most talented rookie in his draft class. He's not the most productive rookie. So to me, this is the situation. Burrow, if he's going to be the true number one, he needs to produce more. They need to win games. You could say, oh, the coaching staff's bad. You could say, oh, his supporting cast is bad. If you are the true generational talent that you claim to be, and everyone says Joe Burrow is the best quarterback since Andrew Luck, maybe even better. If he is that guy, you should do a little more. I understand the second year is really the most telling year for a quarterback, not the first one. So I don't want to be too harsh. So really, I mean, we've seen plenty of guys struggle their rookie seasons. Think about Peyton Manning, think about Andrew Luck. But at the same time, I would expect a little more from our generational talent. Going through the Chargers, without Joey Bosa, this team is not very good defensively. I mean, they had Jordan James and Joey Bosa. It'd be a very significant season, I believe. But they don't have either of those guys. They don't have Austin Eckler, the running back. Justin Herbert, I like him more than Mike does. I think Herbert could be a top 12 quarterback in the NFL. Mike still has more concerns about him than I do. Herbert's been very productive this year. There are a few mistakes, obviously, you need to keep track of because he's been turning the ball over a little more than some of the other rookies. Overall, I like him a lot moving forward. The future to me is bright in Los Angeles. They can just get their guys healthy. The Giants playing much better than what they were at the very beginning of the year. Daniel Jones, the best week of his season this past week, and they beat the Philadelphia Eagles. I like Joe Judge. I like the direction this team's headed. I think I compared them to the Miami Dolphins from last year with Brian Flores. So I think there's momentum here. The Giants are only a half a game actually behind the Philadelphia Eagles for the divisional lead. So there's a chance to make the playoffs with 5 or 6 wins. I like the direction they're headed. They're still one of the worst teams in the NFL, though. The Houston Texans, better quarterback. Deshaun Watson is a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. Their defense has been horrible. The offensive line outside of Larry Tunsil is not that good. They don't have a running game. Will Fuller is the best wide receiver. That's basically all I can tell you about the Houston Texans. They have a quarterback. They have a left tackle. They might have a defensive end. That's about it. The Bears. Bears have a very good defense. I'd say top 10 defense in the NFL this year. So maybe not very good, but solid defense. The offense is god-awful. It is 31st in most categories, but it's 31st in yards, first downs, and I believe points per game, only behind the New York Jets, who we'll get to later. So the offense is terrible to the point that I can't put them much higher than this. I know the record, or they 5-5. Let me look at it real quick here. They opened the season with a very large win streak to the point where they were talking about, oh, they can't miss the playoffs. Possibly, right? They can't possibly miss the playoffs. They can't screw this up. And yeah, they opened the year, I believe, going 5-1. They have now lost 4 games in a row, and they're going to miss the playoffs. So that's where I'm at with Chicago right now. They have no offense whatsoever. The only piece I like offensively for them is Allen Robinson. Everything else could probably just start over. Number 27, Philadelphia. I like Doug Peterson still. I still like Carson Wentz. They've been awful this year, and I put some blame on both those guys. I put some blame on the GM, Howie Roseman. Everyone in that organization has been awful this year. I don't care. You can't blame injuries for forever. You did that last season. We did it all through the first half of this season. They're getting healthier now. They still found a way to lose to the New York Giants. This team is just bad. Maybe they'll switch around next year, but my faith in this organization is really shaken over the past couple of weeks. Washington is trending in the right direction. I know we lost to Detroit this past week, but Alex Smith played fairly well. I think Alex Smith is looking much better now. I like what we saw from Antonio Gibson at running back. In terms of corner wide receiver, he's going to be a stud. He's very good. Defensively, Chase Young's been a bit of a letdown. They have not had the pieces, I think, work out they were hoping for defensively this year. The pass was just kind of trailed off. So there are a lot of concerns there for me defensively for Washington. Offense is starting to look much better. It's just been interesting to see how they acquire their quarterback in the future, because at this point, I'm assuming it's not Dwayne Haskins, and it probably won't be Alex Smith, at least next year. 29 Denver Broncos. Drew Lock, like I said earlier this episode, 4 interceptions in one game. That's ridiculous. That's too much. I don't care how much like Denver's defense. If you're defensively, you deserve to be in the bottom 5 teams in the NFL. 30 Dallas. Mike McCarthy's done a job. The coaching staff's hated in Dallas so far. The free agent signings they made earlier this year, like guys like Dontari Poe, I think Darryl Worley was one of them as well. Everson Griffin haven't worked out, and a lot of them aren't even on the team anymore. I think that speaks volumes to how badly this team has been constructed. We'll see if Andy Dalton returning can salvage a little bit of the season for them, maybe even get them to the playoffs, because honestly, the NFC East is wide open for everyone. But really, I have little faith in Dallas Cowboys, and I have little faith in their coaching staff right now. 31 Jacksonville Jaguars. This is the only team to me that can compete with the New York Jets for the top spot in the NFL draft. They are playing a little bit better recently. They're playing with a little bit more fire than they were the past few weeks. So it looks well, they could maybe pick up another win or two towards the end of the year here. But their schedule is Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Minnesota, Tennessee, Baltimore, Chicago, Indianapolis. There's not an easy win there on the entire schedule. So there's a chance here that Jacksonville will finish the season with only 1 win. And 32 New York Jets. I do. I think Joe Flacco's played well in a couple of games this year because I know Brown's been beat up. Outside of Marcus May, who's a safety for the Jets, Quentin Williams, their defensive tackle, who's in his second year, was a first-round pick last year, and Sam Darnold. Outside of those 3 pieces, I do not love a single. Well, Mekhi Becton actually did. The rookie left tackle has been fairly decent as well. Outside of those 4 pieces, I do not like a single player on this Jets team. And that's not an indictment of them personally. I don't know any of them. But really, the entire team struggled. It's the least talented roster in the NFL right now. And they were still able to win a fairly decent number of games last year, despite being, again, one of the least talented rosters in the NFL. But this year, we've seen the collapse we expected last year. And really, I mean, it's probably safe to say Sam Darnold is not going to be the future of New York. I still like him. I think it's a shame they're probably going to end up kicking him to the curb. I still like him quite a bit. But we'll see how it all works out. That Jets team is awful. They need to get rid of Adam Gase. They need to make significant changes. I feel so bad for him. He's going to get drafted there in a couple of months. But anyways, guys, that's my NFL power rankings heading into week 11. Reminder, you can check out the article on the gruelingtruth.com. You can also check out all of our latest podcasts and articles on the website or on our Facebook page. Make sure you also check out the Ruling Truth on anywhere else, really. We're pretty much on all social media platforms, so feel free to go check us out. And you can follow me at Sam_Teets33 on Twitter. I posted 3 articles yesterday, including this power rankings, also 2 NBA articles because I cover most sports, so feel free to go check those out as well. We'd really appreciate it. And a reminder, use promo code TGG20 at manscaped.com for 20% off your first order and free shipping. Like I said, it's cheaper than what you can find in the store. It's better quality product. I think you just honestly, you don't have to shave your balls. Like, I know that's a joke. We always say on the show, you don't have to use it for that. So really, I mean, even if you're looking to shave, I don't know, your neck, your beard, whatever you're trying to do, I think it'd be better product than what you have in the stores. Like I said, probably cheaper, better quality. I'm satisfied with what I got, so I think this would be a good opportunity for you. And again, it helps out the show if you use promo code TGC20. Thank you everyone for listening to this. I hope I'm going to have a guest tomorrow. I don't know. McGinnis has not texted me back, and I'm starting to get a little annoyed with him, honestly. We'll see. Maybe Steve Risley will come in on Friday. Mike said he might be back on Friday as well, so we'll see how it all works out. But right now, we're kind of flying by the seat of our pants, and we'll hopefully figure out what we're doing and have a little bit more of a more cohesive show for you tomorrow. But anyways, thank you so much for watching, and we'll talk to you all tomorrow.